What's going on, everybody? Just checking in here. I wanted to say something about maintaining practices that allow you to build skills that lead to mastery. You know, when you whatever kind of goals or dreams or things that you want to achieve, instead of focusing on like all of the different things that you got to do. And by the way, if you hear, I got a printer going in the background, so, fuck it. Whatever things that you want to achieve, it can be easy to be overwhelmed by, and I found myself in this place. It can be easy to be overwhelmed by all the different things that you think you got to be doing to get there. And especially if that dream entails like if it's a big dream, if it entails a lot of different seeming moving parts to make real. And I found myself in this place where I was literally trying to do all of those things. And I even developed systems to be able to do all of those things, which was cool. But I was burning myself out trying to uphold all of these different things that I put in place, all of these different tasks, essentially, that most of which weren't even really moving the needle. It was just things that I thought that I had to do to get to where I was trying to go. But either way, if you more so focus on and establish the key like skills. So for instance, me speaking, because I know that is going to be a big part of the way that I serve. And so instead of thinking like, oh, I got to put on these like big events and I got to do, I got to create and schedule these speaking arrangements and things like that, it was like, well, how can I just do something that is simple that will develop the skill of speaking? And if I continue to show up to that practice, it will lead to that thing. Or even going to the Olympics and, being a world champion athlete, instead of like, oh man, all these things I got to do. And I got to, work with these different coaches, and I got to potentially even relocate to train full time, like all these different things. Instead of that, what if I just focus on the processes, is another way to put it. What if I focus on the processes that will lead to the development of the skill that will lead to mastery, that will lead to where I want to go? And with the speaking, it was like, well, I can do these podcasts. I can show up and I can just record myself, even if nobody ever hears this, because as of the recording of this, I still don't have the systems in place or the people in place to take all of these recordings, take all of this content that I've been creating, and then be able to get it out into the public. And I've been creating a shit ton of content. I just haven't been putting it out there. And it's been a discipline of mine to not take all of that on, so I can continue to focus on the key things that are the skills that I want to develop that will lead to all of those other things. Because if you do this right, developing those skills, developing mastery in a few key areas and the things that you're most passionate about, things that you enjoy to do, if you do that, it will lead to all the other stuff. Because, life has a funny way of just working itself out. Paradoxically, the more that we just get out of our own way and allow things to unfold the way that they're meant to unfold. And there's even like an argument of like, no matter how hard you try, things are just going to happen in the way in which they're going to happen. And it's like this whole argument of destiny and free will, which honestly I don't really want to get into right now. I've kind of touched on that in different areas here. But having those skills, again, speaking, doing these podcasts, being an athlete, just consistently training for weeks and weeks, months, years and years, over a long period of time, has led to this place of mastery. And obviously I still have a long ways to go, but I've been training for a decade, and it's like through that consistent effort has led to the success that I have had. And same thing with this podcast, and a lot of times we stop ourselves in our tracks because we don't take that first step, because we're afraid to move out of our comfort zone. We're afraid to like suck at something. But no matter what you do, you're not going to be good at something unless you go through the phase of sucking at something. And the faster you can just go through that phase, just like again with this podcast or with writing or whatever, like even music, whatever those things that I choose to do, giving myself permission to just practice. And like that's the thing too, when you focus more on a practice rather than an outcome, then you don't get so attached to how something turns out, and therefore you give yourself more creative freedom just to play around and to experiment with different things, to try new things, and to ultimately to fail, because that's what it's going to take. You're going to fail, and it's again, that's just a term. Failure, you don't have to identify with that. It's just stepping stones in the process. But if you don't even start because you're afraid to fail, or you're afraid to suck, or you're so focused on the outcome that it seems like it seems so far away, and it seems like so much work that you feel more comfortable just staying where you're at, because there's also this kind of fear of success that holds a lot of us back too, that we don't realize. We say we want to be successful, but actually in order to be successful we have to change, and we fear change. Especially the ego fears change. The ego likes to keep things comfortable, even if that comfort is uncomfortable, even if we're living in pain. If we're familiar with that pain, if we're familiar with that discomfort, there's a lot of energy to uphold that, even if it's not leading us to where we want to go. So going back into the practices, and there's a system that maybe I'll do a podcast on this one of these days, or video or whatever, but this is a system that I teach a lot of my clients, and that I've gone through myself, obviously, to where breaking down what is your genius, and like breaking that all the way down into what are the practices that will lead you to the cultivation and the expression of that genius. And then just putting the systems in place to be able to show up consistently, non-negotiably to those things every single day. And it doesn't necessarily have to be every single day. It could be a weekly schedule, a monthly schedule, quarterly, whatever that is. But whatever that is that you can stay consistent with, because that's the biggest thing. Like, none of this stuff is really that hard. It's just you have to do it long enough to be good at it, and you have to do it long enough to be really good at it. And it has to be things that you're passionate about, because those are the things that are really going to lead you to your genius. Like if I wasn't passionate about speaking and recording and teaching, I could do this my whole life, but I may never actually get to a certain level of mastery, because there's not that additional fire behind it that really makes it an expression of my being, that really allows me to take chances and to take risk and to put myself in situations where I may just fall flat on my face. But because I enjoy the process of it so much, even like with training, because I enjoy training so much, regardless of how much it sucks at times, I still just keep showing up, and I keep showing up, and I keep showing up. And that's the fucking secret. It's not, everybody knows this. Nobody practices it. It just keep showing up. And that's why, I'm so passionate about creating systems in your life that give you more freedom. Because if you put the right shit into place, then you know that you're going to stay consistent with the things that are important. And by staying consistent with the things that are important, then you're continuously moving the needle to where you want to go. All right. So that's my big message. Like, if you want to realize the success that you're capable of, if you want to reach your highest level of potential, it doesn't take anything like grand or these big, huge, massive changes in your life. It's just identifying and establishing key, simple, repeatable practices of things that you're passionate about, and things that you can leverage, again, like this what I'm recording right now is a very high leverage activity, because not only am I practicing my speech, not only am I expressing my ideas and therefore be able to synthesize them better, I'm recording this, so there's audio that is being recorded. I'm creating a video of this, so there's video that is being recorded, and I can use this in so many different ways. And so it's like, this takes maybe 10-15 minutes of my time, and it can have so many different uses, and I'm getting practice out of it. So it's like, this is one of the things that I identified as a very high leverage activity. And that's another way to look at it. What are the highest leverage activities that you can be doing on a consistent basis? So whatever those things are for you. And again, if you want more help identifying that for you, because there is a little bit of a process to really get down to those, depending on where you're coming from, and how much you've been doing this kind of like inner work to really identify. Because again, sometimes you ask people what they're passionate about, you don't know, because you haven't really explored, and you haven't given yourself permission to put yourself in situations where you might fail to really figure out what that is. And part of that too is getting out of a perpetual overly stressed state, which has to do with cleaning up your diet, going to bed on time, taking time to just relax. Into one of the paradoxes here is like creating space that begs to be filled. And a lot of times we, especially in this kind of westernized infrastructure, it's kind of frowned upon to just be idle. But in my experience, the idle time can be some of the most productive time, because again, emptiness begs to be filled. Sometimes when I'm just sitting there and essentially doing nothing, literally just sitting there, meditating, whatever you want to call it, that's when some of the best ideas come. That's when some of the best insights come. That's when it allows me to see the bigger picture, so that I can then go through and then create these systems that allows me to show up in this way on a consistent basis. So that's my invitation for you. What are the key items? Maybe it's just one. And I honestly, the less, the better. The less, the more. Because if you can just only focus on one thing, that if you just did, and this is a good question to ask yourself, if you just did one thing, what would that one thing be that would either make all the other things irrelevant, or that would, by a natural flow, would make all the other things just take care of themselves? And so that's the goal. How do you take everything and make it into one thing? And then sometimes you can invert that if you need a little extra help of, if what was the one thing that you stopped doing, or maybe the 1 to 3 or 4 things that if you didn't do these things, everything would fall apart and you'd never get to where you want to go. That's another way to look at it. Inverted thinking can sometimes bring some clarity to you. So I hope this was helpful. And if you found this valuable, I would really love it and appreciate it if you can share it. Because that's, I don't really do a whole lot of marketing. That's how this stuff spreads. I just really believe in the value of providing value and allowing the people and the places, the things, allowing whoever, whatever needs to resonate with this to resonate. But it, it does help when it is shared. So I would appreciate that. And yeah, the journey is the way, y'all. Have an amazing day, night, whatever you're doing. And I look forward to sharing with you again real soon. Peace.